Well, since this season of The Last of Us has just ended, I can confidently admit that it was an absolute shit show from start to finish.
Oh man! Oh god! Oh man! Oh god! Oh man!
Between a plot that was stretched thinner than my sock threads, cringe writing that makes you question whether a 4th grader wrote it, and a main actress who conveys less emotion than a stormtrooper most of the time, it's no wonder that the audience scores tanked harder than my self-esteem after 2 weeks on Bumble. The show completely fails to provide a compelling story, thought-provoking dilemmas, or unique relationships, all of which were corner pieces that defined that first season. This season feels like we're just watching a 6-year-old play with some action figures. Fans of the games didn't like a lot of the changes made, and people like me who never played the games but enjoyed season 1 were left wondering what the hell happened that made this season such a fucking dumpster fire. So I went back and rewatched each episode to boil down the biggest issues of this season into 9 main contributors. Spoiler alert, I'm not going to be talking about the show being woke because there are so many other problems to discuss and I want to keep the discussion away from politics. Season 2 is riddled with horrible writing, from huge plot contrivances, to forced relationships, to zombies that now seem like a minor inconvenience. It's amazing that no one tried to abort this train wreck before its painful but inevitable demise. The dialogue is boring and forgettable, there's no build up to anything so nothing feels earned, the stakes are as non-existent as my self-worth, and the main character redefines the meaning of pain in the ass. Most of the dialogue is filler that does very little to further the plot or give us any more insight into our characters, which is incredibly frustrating considering there could be a lot more subtext, even disguised in filler dialogue, that would at least tell us something about our characters' underlying emotions. Alright, now we're gonna go over one of my least favorite things about this season: endless plot holes. I'm honestly shocked at how many plot holes just go completely unanswered this season. How did Jackson Hole get control of a zombie horde overrunning the town in episode 2? Why do our main characters only run into zombies when it's convenient now? Why do the wolves insist on living in a hospital with an airborne cordyceps virus that could potentially wipe them out at any moment? These questions, among many others, go completely unanswered and only add to the lazy writing that is so pervasive throughout the season. Which brings me to my next point of contention: the stakes. At no point throughout the show do I feel like the characters, especially Ellie, are in any sort of actual danger, except for Joel, but we'll get to that dog shit soon enough, trust me. The insane amount of plot armor stuffed into this clunky ass show becomes laughably bad. We got zombies who run right past Tommy so he can 1v1 the big boy, who then conveniently falls over right before pounding him into jelly. We got Abby leaving Ellie alone for no reason, despite the obvious implication that she'll be a problem later on. We got zombies who refuse to climb into the train car until they see Ellie and Dina are moments away from safety. We got my personal favorite, where Ellie, who shouldn't know how to swim, doesn't get knocked out from the massive waves crashing over her and is somehow able to swim to shore through incredibly rough waters, ending up right next to her boat.
What? What the fuck?
This insane plot armor is then followed up with more plot armor where the Seraphites decide to leave Ellie alive despite thinking that she's a wolf.
The village. The village! Leave her!
I swear the writing is so bad it makes me want to rewatch Game of Thrones Season 8. The plot is stretched about as thin as one can stretch it, with a heavy dose of filler and horrible pacing. The lack of plot would have been totally fine if we got way more character development with Ellie than we actually did. We should have seen Ellie's turmoil and anger festering on her path to revenge, but instead we see her acting like a goofy, petulant child who is more focused on joking around with Dina than exacting revenge on Abby for brutally beating and murdering the closest person she had to family. It's not until the last episode that we see some conflict in Ellie over accidentally capping people out of revenge, and even then the writers can't clearly showcase Ellie's growth from her recent experiences.
But Abby gets to live.
Yeah. Are you able to make your peace with that?
Guess I'll have to.
Instead of adding so much nonsensical filler with Ellie and Dina, they could have shown more meaningful scenes with the wolves and Seraphites. I think Jeffrey Wright had like 5 minutes of screen time, which is crazy when you bring in an actor of his caliber after killing off Joel. Which leads us perfectly into our next topic: Joel's death. The events leading up to Joel's death had to be some of the most convenient circumstances to take place. Abby falls into the perfect place at the right time to be stumbled upon and saved by Joel, who then blindly trusts Abby and her armed friends that are stationed near Jackson Hole for unknown reasons. Then Ellie happens to find the exact building Joel's in just in time to see him die, even though the building is nowhere near Joel's patrol route. I heard that this is taken verbatim from the game, but it still doesn't excuse these writers starting with a conclusion and writing the most bullshit way to that conclusion. It's shit like this that just screams, I want to copy Game of Thrones, but I'm not smart enough to write like George R.R. Martin. It's obvious that they completely missed the critical elements that made killing off main characters in Game of Thrones work so well. There was significant buildup and reasoning behind each death, and so it never felt like George was desperately trying to write his way to a conclusion. Even after Joel's death, the writers do a piss-poor job of showcasing anyone close to him going through any grief. Tommy cries for a minute, Ellie throws some coffee beans onto his grave, and then the rest is just a fun adventure with two teenage girls. Speaking of one of those teenage girls, let's talk about Dina. And I want to start off by saying that Isabella Merced did a great job in this role, and these issues have absolutely nothing to do with her acting. Despite being on screen a good portion of this season, Dina had virtually zero character development. And while I don't think that every character needs a full arc, a main character on screen should absolutely have some development or a serious impact on the main character. Even finding out that she was pregnant didn't seem to matter all that much to her, as she still felt really strongly about putting herself in harm's way for the sake of getting revenge on Abby. I just think they could have done a lot more with this character than having her carry Ellie through the entire show. And speaking of the devil, let's go over how terrible Ellie is this season. No, not you, don't worry, we'll get to you soon enough, trust me, but right now we're just gonna focus on the writing for Ellie. This character has more problems than the Rise of Skywalker, so I'll try to keep this brief.
Somehow Palpatine returned.
Straight up, Ellie is not relatable to audiences in the slightest. For starters, she has to be the least likable protagonist I've seen in any TV show, maybe even including She-Hulk. She's a total asshole to everyone who isn't Dina, and there's not much subtext to justify her assholery. In the flashbacks, they try to make it seem like Ellie and Jesse are friends, but outside of those brief moments, she's a constant dick to him for literally no reason.
That's a good thing we did.
You know what, we're doing pretty fucking good up
Up until what?
Why is she so mad at Jesse for saving them? Like, this is what I mean by there being no reasoning behind her anger towards Jesse. If they wanted to show Ellie having outbursts as part of her grief process, they needed more subtext in Ellie's dialogue and emotions to fully convey that. Instead, most of the time she just acts like a 10-year-old going on a fun adventure with her bestie.
Ta-da! What? Lights. Oh, good. They have a big-ass generator down there. Natural gas, baby. I'm gonna be a dad.
Ellie.
Yes? You love me?
Does this seem like someone who's on a revenge mission to kill the person responsible for mercilessly torturing and murdering the closest person they had to family right in front of them? It feels like the writers were worried the audience would end up hating Ellie if she was too consumed with vengeance, but they ended up writing this petulant, mean, annoying, and incredibly dumb protagonist with zero redeeming qualities. Which brings me to my next point about this dogshit character. Why is Ellie so incredibly dumb? I've heard from fans of the game that she's supposed to be pretty smart, so what's the justification for dumbing her down? All it does is add to her grating personality that makes you wonder, what does Dina actually see in Ellie? Speaking of which, let's talk about the horribly lazy writing that is the relationship between Dina and Ellie. This has to be one of the worst written relationships outside of the Hallmark Channel. It makes the CW look like A24 in terms of writing quality. In episode 3, Dina and Ellie can't even admit to liking each other, while Dina asks Ellie to rate their kiss.
How would you rate it?
Then in episode 4, Dina tells Ellie she's pregnant, which causes them to go straight to bumping nasties, which came across about as awkwardly as it sounds.
I'm pregnant.
Then they followed up the very next morning with talking about wanting to start a family together.
Together, and we have a kid, and I don't even know if you want that.
I want it with you.
They haven't even established any relationship, but are already talking about starting a family?
So we're having a baby. So we're all having a baby. Holy shit. I'm gonna be a dad. Yeah.
Also, a lot of people seem to think that this scene was written as a joke, which would probably make it the worst delivered joke in the history of television. Her saying,
So we're having a baby.
and Dina's response don't make this seem like a joke at all. And I wouldn't even be mentioning this if it was some throwaway line that was quickly moved on from, but they make a point of highlighting this moment for some reason. Ultimately, I think the only purpose of this line was to indulge the creators, but let's let Craig Mazin explain why the line was so important to the story.
I'm gonna be a dad.
Bella and I were talking about that episode, and I like to run things past them all the time. And I was like, okay, this just popped into my head. I don't know why, it just felt right. It's not an expression of even gender as much as just state of mind. Bella said, oh, no, I have to. Sometimes to have somebody say, oh, I don't mind doing that, you're looking for them to say, oh, no, I must. Yes, please let me do that. The joy that just burbles out of Bella when they say, I'm gonna be a dad, it's wonderful.
Yep, a writer who just does whatever idea pops into his head without thinking if it makes sense or fits with the character is exactly who you want helping adapt an original IP into a TV show. But enough of this, let's move on to the only big issue left to talk about, Bella Ramsey's acting. It's obvious that without the acting power of Pedro Pascal to carry the show, Bella Ramsey was brutally exposed. Between her painfully wooden delivery during emotional moments, her over-the-top face acting whenever she wasn't doing the Care Bear stare, and her inability to convey subtext beneath her dialogue, Bella's acting is certain to land her a minor role in the next Descendants movie. In all seriousness though, she would have been fine acting as like a supporting character in a show of this size, but putting her front and center as the main protagonist was akin to throwing her head first into Mordor. The rest of the cast acting ranges from pretty good to excellent, which only made Bella's acting stand out that much more. Being surrounded by heavy-hitting actors like Pedro Pascal, Catherine O'Hara, Jeffrey Wright, Tony Dalton, and Joe Pantoliano can sometimes drown out a less experienced actor, but this isn't the case with Bella Ramsey. She still stands out as the weakest among the other young, less experienced actors like Isabella Merced, Caitlin Dever, and young Mazzino. Sorry if I mispronounced anyone's name, by the way. She had a couple of decent moments, but the vast majority of Bella's scenes were really painful to watch. So yeah, ultimately, this season was a total fucking disaster, but most of the blame really lies with the writing on this one. I know it's easy to blame the lead actor or actress for a show sucking on this level because they're technically the face of it, but Bella Ramsey doesn't deserve the majority of the blame here. Anyways, let me know if you agree, if you disagree, I want to hear it all. Otherwise, I'll see you guys in the next one.